Once the largest land in Europe, now on the course of an alarming decline. Lithuania mostly gets bundled with the rest of its Baltic siblings, although it's not just a one-of-a-kind story, but a distinct genre in itself. Although one that is, unfortunately, moving closer to the fate of silent films than of comic book movies. The country suffered great human losses during the occupations of great powers in the 20th century. Yet, absurdly, those tragic figures are numerically dwarfed by the ones expecting the country due to joining a great alliance willingly. Fortunately, far less sinister in nature, yet still alarming. Yet due to its almost unbelievable history, outlandish sites and geographical placement, the explanation and exploration of Lithuania will be as rich with fun gems as there are lakes in it. Located on the shores of the Baltic Sea in the northeastern part of Europe, Lithuania has undergone a considerably downsizing since the days we opened with, and is now the 24th largest country on the continent, with 65,300 km square of landmass, making it the 124th largest country in the world. Actually, almost identical to the size of Sri Lanka and one of their neighbors, Latvia. Lithuania gets the bragging rights of being both the biggest and the most populous Baltic state though, beating Estonia and aforementioned Latvia. There are about 2.8 million people living here, making the country ranked 35th in Europe and 144th in the world in terms of population. Bordering Latvia to the north, Belarus on the east and south, Poland to the south, and Russia's territory of Kaliningrad on the southwest, for a total of 1,574 kilometers of borders, the longest of which is with Belarus at 680 kilometers. Lithuania also has a coastline of 262 kilometers and shares a maritime border with Sweden. Internally, the country is divided into 10 counties, the largest and most populous one being the one centered around the capital city of Vilnius, which is also the largest city in the country. The city got its name after the Vilnia River, which flows and connects with a big river of Neris that flows through the heart of the city. Vilnia, meaning ripple in Lithuanian, therefore makes sense in the naming. The city is filled with around 550,000 people and is located just 30 kilometers from the border with Belarus. And it's about twice the population size of the runner-up Kaunas, as it holds 21% of Lithuania's total population in its urban center alone. But Vilnius isn't just only the cultural and economical center of Lithuania, but also a geographical center of Europe, at least according to some, as there are contestants for the honors, depending on who and what you measure. Yet the Guinness Book of World Records does recognize the nearby village of Girja as the epicenter of the old continent, which is another word for Europe if that wasn't clear. The second largest city is, as we mentioned, Kaunas, and has about 290,000 people, meaning that the two biggest cities in Lithuania amount to about 31% of the total populace. Although, there are two more cities with populations higher than 100,000. Of these two, Klaipeda is the more notable one as it is the port city and is located as a gate to one of the country's most noteworthy geographical features, the Lithuanian Sahara, or more commonly named the Curonian Spit. A 98 kilometers long, thin and curved sand dune spit that separates the Curonian lagoon from the Baltic Sea coast. Overall, Lithuania is a predominantly lowlands country, with the highest point being just 293.84 meters tall. The Aukštojas hill holds this very shy height record of the nation. Although that is not quite true actually, considering that the Vilnius TV tower stands at 326 meters. So the highest point should go to the Vilnius Televizijos bokštas. And you might say my pronunciation might have been a bit off so far, which is strange, considering I should had a lot of time practicing Lithuanian, as it is a very old language. In fact, it's one of the oldest languages in the world today, and it's the oldest living Indo-European language of Europe. But moving back to things being tall, or well, the opposite, what Lithuania lacks in terms of mountains, it makes up in other recognizable reliefs such as already mentioned the Curonian Lagoon, which it shares with Russia's son studying abroad, Kaliningrad. This mostly freshwater lagoon has a total size of almost 1.6 thousand kilometers square, but the Lithuanian part is only 381 kilometers square. Yet Lithuania has the better use for it as Klaipeda is the only port. Besides being the former base of the Teutonic Knights, the lagoon was formed 3,000 years before our era, as the winds created the Curonian Spit dune, which split the two bodies of water. But according to Baltic myths, which we of course prefer, the Curonian Spit was formed by a giantess named Neringa to protect her home from the rage of Naglis, an evil dragon. With this inviting coast, Lithuania's climate is both maritime and continental, and the country as a whole is located in a cool temperature zone, meaning they have moderately warm summers and moderately cold winters. The average temperature in the hottest month of July sits at only 17 degrees Celsius, while in the winter it's around -5 degrees Celsius. But the moderate weather didn't stop the around 2.4 million foreign tourists from spending a night in the country in 2021, most of them from their close neighbors Poland and Latvia. So we stated that on the west side of Lithuania we have a lot of water, right? But the fact is that the east side also has its fair share of water, in the form of lakes. There are nearly 3,000 lakes larger than 1 hectare across the territory overall, supplemented by 1,600 ponds. Land reclamation and swamp drainage has been of major importance to the Lithuanians since 1991. And if they need help with this drainage, we know some guys. Some of these lakes also make for parts of the natural borders with Belarus. Something which can't be said for the bulge around the town of Ivanishkevs that is connected to the mainland, with a passage wide of less than 3 kilometers. Other lakes are used even better, like the Gal, which boasts one of the most memorable sites in Lithuania, Trakai Island Castle. Built amidst the glory days of Lithuania in the 15th century, today is an unmatched picture of a fantasy saga idyllic, only to be found in video games. Yet, it is a rare part of Lithuania that looks like a fairy tale you want to tell your smallest children, because the lush forests that cover a third of the country root in a far different setting, an eerie tone amplified by the knowledge of history and the present. The true history starts in the 3rd millennium BC, with the Baltic tribes arriving as the weather became more hospitable. Yet this area is perhaps more shrouded in secrecy than any other in Europe, mostly because the Balts were too far even for the grasp of the Roman Empire, although trade happened between the cultures as a part of the Amber Road. So, hidden by their unforgiving marches, the Balts resisted the influence of the Western culture, simply going by with paying tributes to Vikings or the Kievan Rus to avoid raids. In the 13th century AD, the history of Lithuania as we know it today can be discussed, as the German Teutonic Order moved east and conquered the areas of Estonia and Latvia, making the Lithuanian tribes unite. The only crowned king of Lithuania ever, Mindaugas, ruled the land from the year 1236 to 1263, and even though he was baptized as a Roman Catholic at the time of his coronation on 6th of July 1253, which is now the official state day in Lithuania, his country remained majority pagan past his reign and assassination. The country had no other kings, but had the equivalent, Grand Dukes, and under them, the power of Lithuania grew. Grand Duke Jogaila accepted the offer of the Polish to become their king, married their monarch, and converted his duchy to Christianity in 1386. To put it in a different perspective, this was only 106 years before the continent of America was discovered by the Europeans, and in a way, the Baltics were the final frontier of the European continent. Battling formidable foes like the Golden Horde, Teutonic Knights and the Muscovites, Lithuania reached its peak under Vytautas the Great in the 14th century, becoming the largest country in Europe. Yet, a new threat arose in the east, the Muscovites grew stronger. Battling the Russians forced Lithuanians closer to the Poles, and the two entities formed one, a Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth in 1569. The federation was one of the largest and most populous countries in Europe in the 16th and 17th centuries. They enjoyed the Golden Age and resisted the Muscovites. Kings of Poland and Grand Dukes of Lithuania were elected by the nobility. Yet, as many did after, the Commonwealth made a mistake of taking the fight to Russia and losing Lithuanian territories. The Swedes descended onto the Baltics in the Northern Wars, and in wars against the two powers, aided by the plague and famine, the Commonwealth lost 40% of its populace, resulting in the partition of the country by